Hello. Today I would like to talk to you about my rope and cardboard edge retention testing. Warning, this is not science. This is not scientific. Me and my friend started messing around, and this has evolved into a somewhat consistent comparison. So I'm going to talk to you about how that happened and how it came about. So a few years ago, my friend and I I'm just going to fidget with this knife to give you guys something to look at. It was a CMB Made Knives Predator, by the way. I've done a review on this knife. My friend and I were motivated by Cedric and Ada's rope edge retention testing. However, when we started doing this, this was not our intent. The first thing that happened was we tried to compare knife to knife. This had nothing to do with comparing steel to steel. The first knives we tested were two of his Swiss Army type knives. He had one that he just bought from some random place that he calls it China Swiss Army knife. It's like a $3 or $5 knife. It's a total piece of crap. And he compared it with a different sort of generic Chinese gift shop kind of Swiss Army knife. And we cut paper. We started doing this with paper because we didn't have anything else. So we're just cutting paper and seeing what happens. So we did this a couple times. And again, we were just trying to compare knife to knife to see how different knives cut. After doing this a couple times, we decided to continue doing this. So we moved on to 1/4-inch rope. I went to the local hardware store called Harbor Freight, and I bought 1/4-inch rope. 1/4-inch sisal rope. The brand is this. Now, this one says 1/2-inch rope because about 2 months ago, Harbor Freight has quit carrying the one I've been using. So, I have moved on to Walmart. I have no idea if these are the same. It's the best I can do. Anyway, just know, now I'm using Walmart 1/4-inch sisal rope because I can't find the other stuff I started with. Anyway, I bought crap tons of this stuff from the local hardware store. And we began cutting rope. So, to add a level of difficulty to this, we decided to add cardboard. The first type of cardboard we cut was from a saltine cracker box. We cut it into strips about this size, and we would make equal cuts of the rope with equal cuts of the soda box cardboard. One thing we learned was that this rope, this 1/4-inch sisal rope, is quite difficult to cut. In the beginning, when we first started doing this, it was very, very, very difficult to cut this rope, and it took almost supreme effort on our part to try to cut this rope. Since then, we have refined our technique, and now we're able to cut it more efficiently, and it's less exhausting. Just know, this stuff is not that easy to cut. At some point, we started cutting rope, and we started cutting cardboard. We only cut the saltine cracker box cardboard one time. When we decided that we were going to continue to do this test, I had to figure out what kind of cardboard we could use that would be comparable, and we drink a lot of soda, so we decided to use this soda box cardboard. So we cut it up into similar size strips as what we did with the other thing. It's 2.5-inch strips. It just works out that they come out relatively evenly when I cut the panels down. I have a video demonstrating how I cut this stuff down in my Sage 6 update review. You'll see me cut a whole bunch of this down. You can see the process of how I do it. So they're very similar boxes. Sometimes I try to use the wholesale size 36 count boxes of these. That's my preferred one. Sometimes we run out of those, and so sometimes I'll use 12-pack cardboard. Sometimes I use 24-pack cardboard. As far as I can tell, these are not all the same density. The 36-pack ones are clearly thicker than the other two. However, I think they're close enough to make at least some kind of reasonable comparison. Again, this is not science. This is the best I can do in my household with limited means and limited supplies. However, my friend has noticed, he does a lot of the cardboard cutting, by the way. He has noticed that he thinks Coca-Cola brand cardboard cuts more difficultly than Pepsi product, 7-Up, and whatever else. Please know, in my mind, trying my best to use the same rope, although now my rope is not available, so I have to switch. Trying my best to use similar cardboard, similar size. Again, this is not science. So where we decided we were going to say, oh, well, let's try all these different knives and see how these steels can perform. So we started doing this with many, many different knives. What we thought would happen was that the knives would fail to cut either the rope or the cardboard somewhere in the test. So what happened was we started out doing cycles of 10, where we would do 10 cuts of the rope. Log, we did 10 cuts. We'd do 10 cuts of the cardboard. Log that we did 10 cuts of cardboard. And then would repeat until the knife couldn't cut catalog paper. So that's how my test turned into one cycle of rope and one cycle of cardboard equals one cycle of however many cuts, 10 or 50. If we're testing a knife that has more crappy steel, like maybe a Walmart knife or an entry-level steel like 3CR or 7CR, something that may not be super powerful steel, we will usually do them in cycles of 10 because we think the knife's going to dull after 40, 50, 60, 70 cuts. So we'll do them in smaller cycles. If we have a steel that should perform better, like S30V, S35VN, we'll usually start with 50 cycles. 50 cuts of rope, 50 cuts of cardboard, which equals 50 cuts, because those knives can usually do more work. Typically what will happen is we will see that the knife is starting to cut the paper less well, and we'll realize it's about to dull, and we'll drop the number of cuts. So if we think the knife is starting to fail, but it can still cut the paper sufficiently, instead of doing cycles of 50, we'll do cycles of 20 or 10, so that we get as accurate as we can a number. So we're not just going 50, 50, 50, and we're giving the knife a chance to do 50 cuts when it was on the verge of dulling at, say, cut 55. The following is a demonstration of how this test works. This is not an actual testing process I am showing. This is just me demonstrating how I make these cuts. Okay, so this is the rope, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. For this is just a demonstration. I'm gonna do this with 2 different knives. This is the CMB Made Knives Predator. It's got a 3.4 inch blade. This is a mini bug out. It's got like a 3 or just under inch blade. So I'm just using these 2 different size knives to show you kind of how I would do this. Again, this is just a demonstration. I start out with 1/4 inch rope. For this knife, let's just say I'm doing a cycle of 10. I start making cuts on the rope. I'm going to try to use this area of the blade, approximately. I think that was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Some of these I'm not lining up very good because I'm looking at the camera, so if that looked like I wasn't being consistent, I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. So I did 10 cuts of rope. Then I do 10 cuts of cardboard. These are 2.5 inch strips. 1, 2, 10 cuts of rope, 10 cuts of cardboard. That would count as one cycle of 10 cuts. This is what it would look like with the bug out. As you can see, I'm trying to use about approximately the same area of the blade. Because this rope is so small, I will deliberately start to try to line some up more with the tip, because usually they're kind of right in here. So at some point I will try to do some more kind of up in that tip. Then I would do 10 cuts of cardboard, just like I did with the other one. So 10 cuts of rope, 10 cuts of cardboard with each knife. Again, this is just to show you how this works. Normally I would just be doing this with one knife. So this knife has now done one cycle of 10 cuts. I would check it on this paper. Seems fine. This knife would continue the test. So that's how it works. I would stop the test when I can't reliably cut the paper, like many people do. When the knife fails to cut that paper, I will check it on this notebook paper. If it can cut this notebook paper, then I continue the test with this 1/2 inch rope until it can no longer cut this paper. This is what I call the working edge. I like my knives to stay sharp. I don't like carrying a knife around that has been dulled almost at all. If I use my knife in any significant way, I almost always will touch it up. One of the things me and my friend wanted to figure out early on, what we wanted to test early on, was we wanted to test the highest form of sharpness that our knives had. Now, the best way I could have done this was to test the sharpness on my arm hair. This is the most consistent way for me to test sharpness, but I have a limited amount of arm hair. It would be really hard to test 3 knives with really good high performance steel. I'd run out of arm hair. So we have to test it on paper. My friend and I do not know a way to accurately measure sharpness on paper without just giving you a guess in our brain of how sharp it is on a scale of 1 to 5 or on a scale of 1 to 10. This is not a very accurate way to measure sharpness. I totally realize this. However, my friend and I have played with knives enough that we have a pretty good feel in our mind of what is sharp, and we have the paper to support our claim of what we, as far as the stopping point of this goes. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because we wanted to measure the extreme sharpness of these knives, the highest level that we were able to get them. Cedric and Ada and many other people are already doing edge retention testing on computer paper or whatever. So we thought that catalog paper, like Uline catalog paper is what I usually use. We thought that paper is more difficult to cut than computer paper. We thought it required a sharper knife to cut than computer paper. So we chose to use catalog paper as our threshold for sharpness. After doing this for a long time, I don't know if we were right or wrong, but that's what we did, so that's what we continue to do. So, just to recap, me and my friend started doing this. We were initially testing knife versus knife, but then it turned into us trying to figure out, just test all the knives we had. We basically just tested all the knives in our collection, and we're like, okay, let's see what the results are. I'm going to take a moment to talk about factory edges. Most people are not going to agree with me on this. That's okay. I like comparing factory edges of a knife. When I buy a knife, I want to know how sharp the knife was from the factory. This is a very important piece of information for me. I am not a knife maker. I have never made a single knife. I don't know how to make knives. I don't really know how it's done. I don't do that. I expect people to make knives to be able to make them well, and I expect a knife that I buy to be sharp, especially if it's an expensive knife. If I buy a knife from Walmart, I know that thing's probably not gonna be very sharp. If I buy a knife from a local hardware store, I know that thing's probably not going to be very sharp. If I buy a knife off Amazon, some company nobody's ever heard of before, that probably will cease to exist in 2 or 10 weeks, I have no idea if that knife's going to be sharp or not. But when it comes to me, I will note how sharp it was when it came to me. This is very important to me for a couple reasons. Reason one, if these people know how to make knives, they should know how to sharpen them. Reason two, if I were not a knife person, if I was just the average person on the street and I had no idea how to sharpen a knife, that factory edge would have to carry me for probably 2 to 3 years or more until I broke the knife, lost it, or found somebody that I could rely on to sharpen it for me. I think the factory edge of a knife is very, very important. And I will tell you, I have used and carried a factory edge knife in my life for a long time with no problem. So I'm not the guy that just automatically resharpens the knife. As soon as I get it out of the box, I know many of you are going to be the kind of people that just resharpen it, put your own edge on it. That is perfectly great. It's perfectly acceptable. I have absolutely no problem with that. Do it, live your life. Note, I will only carry a knife with its factory edge on it if it came sufficiently sharp, in my opinion, out of the box. If it was not sufficiently sharp, I will touch it up before carrying it. I want to note what the factory edge came like to me so I can judge the knife maker, and so I know what I can report or relay to a lay person, what they can expect with a knife. If Spyderco gives me knives that are of a certain quality, sharpness out of the box, I can relay that to a friend of mine at work or whatever, coworker, friend, family member. Finally, the last reason that I care about factory edges is for my edge retention testing, which this is a newer thing for us. We've been doing it for a few years. I only get one shot. I get a brand new knife, I get one shot at checking the factory edge. If I don't check it, if I don't test it, it's gonna be gone. I'll never get to do it again. So I might as well just test it. I might as well just test it while I have it. I have no idea what the angles are that the factory gave it to me at. I have no idea of anything. I have no idea what the HRC is on any of these knives. I have no way to measure that. So I'm relying on the knife makers to provide me a product, and I'm comparing those products with each other. I understand that's not scientific, but I have learned that Spyderco generally gives you a knife that's about 17 degrees. If they give me knives that's 20, if they give me knives that's 15, that's on them. I don't know why they're not always the same, but they're a knife maker. I'm not. I will test the factory edges on these knives when I can. Now, for the sake of my testing, when I'm done with the factory edge, if I'm going to test the knife again, I will put an 18-degree edge on it with a Worksharp Precision system, either the Worksharp Precision Adjust Original or the Worksharp Precision Adjust Professional. Now I pretty much use the Professional, but I only recently got it maybe a year or so ago, so I have like a few years of results where I did the other sharpening system. I do them at 18 degrees. I did not come to 18 degrees on accident. I would have done 17 degrees. In my world, I prefer a 17-degree edge to 18. However, we were testing knives kind of early on. We were testing 3 different, like a Bob Dozier Folding Hunter, I think, in AUS 8. I had 3 versions of these knives, and I was testing 3 different ones, and I sharpened them all at 17 degrees on the Worksharp. One of the 3 knives could not perform the test. When I cut the rope, I would cut the rope twice, cut it once, cut it twice, and then the 3rd, 4th cut, it just would not cut the rope. It would get halfway through, and this is a 1/4-inch rope. 3rd or 4th or 5 cuts in, it just died. It just would not do it. Would not cut the rope. It would cut halfway through and would stop. I realized that the edge was getting totally destroyed. So in the first few cuts of 1/4-inch rope, again, this is just 1/4-inch rope, this particular knife could not perform the test. After some more finagling, I figured out that it could perform the test at 18 degrees. I don't know why. 17 degrees was too thin for that particular knife. I don't know if I had a burnt edge. I don't know if I had a bad heat treat. I have no idea. But I decided then to do 18 degrees. That's just what I came to. It's not optimal for me, but that's what we decided. The benefit of that is it gives crappy knives, and I'm not saying the Dozier's a crappy knife. It gives very, very low-end knives a chance to play in my edge retention comparison game. I test Walmart knives. I test knives that I have no idea what the steel is on these things. I have tested Ozark Trail from Walmart. I have tested Mossy Oak from Walmart. I have tested knives that have no name attached to them. So I have tested knives. I have no idea what these steels even are. I have tested 5CR, 15 MOV, 7CR, 8CR, 440C, VG10, and going up the line, D2 all the way up to Maximet and Rex 121. So 18 degrees is what I decided on. I don't know if that was right or wrong, but that's just what I did. So that's what I've been staying with, so I could compare result to result to result. There's a problem with 18 degrees. One of the problems is that if I have a knife that came to me from Spyderco that's actually 16 or 17 degrees, then 18 degrees is actually just kind of adding some kind of micro or macro bevel to it. And I don't know how that affects edge geometry behind the actual edge. I have no idea. You guys that are scientists can tell me. But 18 degrees is what I settled on, so that's what I do. The benefit of doing 18 degrees, again, is that I can let crappy knives play the game. It also saves time because it's easier to reprofile a knife to 18 degrees than it is to reprofile a knife to something lower. It just takes less time, less wear on your stones. So at this point, we have dialed in this testing about as much as we can as two random dudes at our kitchen table playing knife comparison game. Some ways that this has been consistent is very, very early on, we were originally using a wood piece of, little tiny piece of wood. It started getting destroyed really quick. It was just a little piece of crap thing that came in some craft kit. We did like 5 tests on that and it was getting destroyed. So I went out to the store and I bought a plastic. I think this is polypropylene. I have no idea what it is. I bought this years ago. I bought a pack of 4. If I'm doing edge retention testing, I always use this cutting board. This cutting board has lasted for many, 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 many tests. Still going strong. I bought this at Walmart in a 4-pack and it's going strong. I have no idea what it's even called. So same cutting board. I have no idea how much of my testing is the cutting board doling the knives. I'm sure it is some, but I'm using the same cutting board in every test. So that is somewhat standardized. We are using similar cardboard. Again, this is not the same. It's not same. I try to do the best I can, but sometimes I use 12-pack, sometimes I use 24-pack. I will not use a pack that leaked or was wet or sticky. I won't use those. So I cut these down to 2.5-inch strips. I measure them. They're roughly the same size. Similar cardboard. Consistencies. Cutting board is consistent. I'm using the same cutting board every time. Rope is consistent. I'm using the same rope every time until 6 weeks ago when I can't find the rope I was using anymore. And I don't think that rope's coming back, so I had to change. The other consistency, I test factory edges against each other, and if I resharpen the knife, I will note what that resharpening was. Usually it will be an 18-degree work sharp precision edge. Sometimes I do freehand edges, sometimes I do edges I have no idea what they were. I might just come across a knife and test it. I have no idea what the edge is. I'll log the result that I got. Inconsistencies. Angles are not always the same. I'm testing factory edges very, very, very frequently. I also have tested knives that for me are keepsakes or collector knives or knives that really don't even want to use, but I have tested them because I might have a knife that's a collector knife in somewhat exotic steel and I wanted to know the results, so I tested it, but I did not resharpen it. So it's the best I could do. I don't want to destroy my collection for the sake of this experiment that's not even scientific. Sorry, that's where I'm at. I'm trying to be realistic about this. I have no idea what heat treat these things are. I do not have a way to measure heat treat. What is a working edge? I don't know what that means. I have thought about this for a long time, and I think all of us have a different definition of what a working edge is. I suspect that Pete from Cedric and Ada He would say the working edge starts when his knives fail his test. So when they stop cutting computer paper, I think he believes he's in the working edge. And I believe he thinks his test is testing the super sharp edge until it can't cut computer paper. I like my knives to be sharp. I rank knife sharpness on a scale of 1 to 5. I have a video on that. You're welcome to watch it if you do. I'm sorry it's boring. For me, on a scale of 1 to 5, a knife is a 5 if it can really easily and cleanly shave arm hair. It's a 4.5 if it's right in between shaving and scraping arm hair. And it's a 4 if it's right at the threshold of scraping arm hair. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not comfortable carrying a knife in my life that is scraping arm hair. If my knife is scraping arm hair and I'm not in the middle of a job of cutting down a bunch of cardboard, if I'm done with that job, I'm going to resharpen my knife. If it is not shaving arm hair, I'm going to touch it up and keep it sharp. So for me, working edge means something below scraping arm hair. I don't know what that means for this test. I think that when the knives fail our catalog paper test, I believe I'm in the working edge of that knife. At some point in our testing, we tested many, many knives. And at some point in our testing, we wanted to start testing what we thought was a working edge. So we tried cutting all these different kinds of paper, and we found that computer paper and notebook paper frequently will continue to cut. When the knives in our test fail to cut catalog paper, sometimes they will still cut notebook paper or computer paper. So at some time in my testing, we started to test further into what we called the working edge. Now, again, this is very not scientific. Paper is extraordinarily varied in how it cuts. Not all computer paper cuts the same, not all notebook paper cuts the same. This is a very, very difficult thing for a person like me with limited means to figure out how to do. One option would be to use a best tester. I have one. I'm going to tell you that I don't use the best tester in these results because it's freaking expensive. The material that the best tester uses to measure its sharpness is not free. Sometimes in our testing, we will make hundreds of cuts, 50 to 100 or more cuts on catalog paper. If we were using best testing clips, these things would bleed through a whole pack of those things. Testing a high-end steel, it would bleed through a whole pack because we have to check it frequently along the way. So what happens if we get a batch of the steel that peters out quick? We have to check it and make sure it's still going, right? The other problem with the best tester is I think it works, but it's not my favorite way to check for sharpness. I know you guys are gonna want me to use it, but it's just expensive. And the other problem is you have to make sure, if one thing we've learned in doing this test is that our testing dulls these knives by causing damage to the edge somehow. The edges will start to get little dings, rolls, folds, smash, flat spots, something. They'll frequently get some kind of damage along this edge. So if I have a best tester and I'm testing this portion here, I have to test the part I think is dullest. And if I can see there's a tiny ding here, then I have to get that part to somehow touch that wire. It can be really, really finicky. If the edge happens to touch the sharp part of the edge and that ding misses the best testing material, then the best tester is going to tell me the knife is still sharp. When the paper magically can find this freaking little ding. Paper is actually pretty consistent in finding little tiny dings, dents, and scratches. So there's various reasons I don't use the best tester for this testing. One, because I only recently started doing YouTube, so this information was just kind of for me and my friend in my own private little world. One of the main reasons I've started doing a YouTube channel is because I want to start sharing some of these results with you guys, because some of these results are quite interesting. And some of them I can't explain, and hopefully somebody can give me some answers, because you guys are smarter than I am. Working edge. So, in recent testing, in the last year and a half or so, we wanted to test to the working edge. If the knife cuts 100 times through rope, 100 times through cardboard, and then fails to cut the catalog paper, we will check it on either notebook or computer paper. I think we have settled on notebook paper at this point, but we have done both. We have done notebook and we have done computer paper. If the knife, after doing the 100 cuts or whatever its number is, 100 cuts, 50 cuts, 500 cuts, whatever, when the knife is done doing its number of cuts, it stops on the catalog paper, but we check it on the notebook paper. If it can cut the notebook or computer paper, we continue the test on what we now call the working edge. We move from 1/4 inch rope to 1/2 inch rope.
1/4 inch, 1/2 inch.
That is substantial difference. So in my normal testing, we're testing 1/4 inch rope. If the knife stops the test, it's 1/4 inch rope, we're gonna check it on different kind of paper. And if it can cut that different kind of paper, we continue the test to the working edge on 1/2 inch rope. The reason I chose 1/2 inch rope is because this is much thicker. It should be much more difficult to cut. It should be much more dulling. And I heard all these rumors about, oh, the super high vanadium powder steel loses its super sharp edge fast, but the working edge will last forever. Well, this is really hard for me to measure. I wanted to see if there's a way to measure it. This is what I came up with. I have learned I don't think this system that I have is very accurate, but it is something. It is relevant to me. If I have a knife that cuts 100 times through 1/4 inch rope and can still cut this other kind of paper and can cut 1/2 inch rope for another 50 cuts, that's relevant, especially if I have another steel that can't do this at all, or that does this 10 times and peters out. One example is this Predator. This is 14C28N steel. That's basic entry-level steel by most people's standards.
The following example is with this CMB Predator in 14C28N steel versus 3 knives in S30V. These results were all from the factory edges. I do not know the angles they were sharpened at or the heat treat. The first number is the number of cuts on 1/4 inch rope. Then if it continues to the working edge, the number of cuts on the 1/2 inch rope, then the result. So the factory edge of the Predator in 14C28N steel got 210 cuts on the 1/4 inch rope, then was able to continue to the working edge and got 110 cuts on the 1/2 inch rope for a total of 320 cuts. So a 320 cut total, approximately a third of which was on the working edge or 1/2 inch rope. The factory edge of the Mini Bug Out got 160 cuts on the 1/4 inch rope, 40 cuts on the working edge or the 1/2 inch rope for a total of 200 cuts. The factory edge of the Military 2 got 230 cuts on the 1/4 inch rope, was not able to do the working edge test, so it got 0 cuts on the 1/2 inch rope for a total of 230 cuts. The Griptilian's factory edge got 220 cuts on 1/4 inch rope, then 30 cuts on the working edge or 1/2 inch rope for a total of 250 cuts. So in comparing the factory edges of these 4 knives, the Predator outperformed 3 higher performing, higher quality, higher cost steels from 2 reputable manufacturers. I know there are many variables in this testing, but is this not interesting? Remember, the results of these numbers mean that the knives cut that many times through rope and cardboard.
Many knives can only do 10 or 20 cuts on the working edge. Some can't do any cuts at all. Some do quite a few. This is interesting to me. I don't know what all the differences are. I don't understand it, but I think it's of note. When we are done with each of these tests, we touch up the edge with a strop. We've used different strops along the way. Now we've kind of settled on this fancy, we got this at DLT Trading. I don't know if the actual brand is a DLT Trading strop or if this is a Bark River strop or whatever, but we have Bark River compound in it. But we use other strops. Usually the edges have some damage. Sometimes they will just strop back on leather. Sometimes they need to be touched up with a fine ceramic like a Spyderco white Spyderco fine type rod, type ceramic rod. Sometimes it'll take a few swipes of that to get some of that damage out. Most knives that we test are able to strop back. Also keep in mind, in my life, I don't have very many opportunities to cut things, so this rope cardboard cut test is the easiest way for me to compare knives and compare steels to each other in some measurable, comparable way. I agree this is not scientific, but this is what I have. I've done this test many, many times. I have some interesting results that I will discuss later in another video. Thanks for listening. I know this was a boring video. Thanks for hanging in there. I know there was nothing for you to watch or look at. Sorry about that. I didn't want to just sit here and be flipping and fidgeting this the whole time. Please share any thoughts, experiences with me. I know this is not science, but I think there is some information to be learned from this. These knives have cut things. This did happen. I did do this with my hand. Some of these results have to mean something. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.